Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for being here. And in today's video, I'm going to be taking you through a little bit of my training split. I'll actually overview my training split in my kind of workings in my Google Sheets. And I'll also just talk through some of the areas that I'm working on and specializing on and how I'm setting up my mesocycle to allow for that, and my microcycle and kind of the split for the week in general to allow for that, and kind of my rationale behind it, and talk a little bit about frequency and volume and their interaction as well. And whilst that's all going along, there'll be a clip of my first upper body session of the week where you just get to see me in the thick of it training. So here you can actually see my Google Sheets that I work with, because you can see my workings in here. And to keep this video somewhat interactive and interesting, I'm not going to walk you through every little bit of detail here. But in general, when we're thinking about kind of frequencies or training splits, people will ask me like, Steve, what's the best training split? And I'm kind of like, well, that's kind of there is not like upper lower is the best, or push pull legs is the best, or full body is the best. Like, they could all be appropriate, but also there's kind of an easy answer for me. And I'm like, whatever training split, whatever frequency for that muscle group that allows you to get in the volume that you need to do at the highest quality. So that's the way I really think about it. So the higher volumes you have to do, the higher frequency you're going to be at to get the higher quality, whereas the lower the volume you need to do to get the results you want, the lower frequency you can probably get away with. So for me, and I'm going to talk through some of the higher volume kind of muscle groups that I've got in there that are at higher frequencies therefore. And so in general, it's upper body. I just find my upper body needs a bit more volume and can recover from quite a bit more volume than, say, my lower body. When we're thinking about the 10 to 20 sets, it's much more likely my upper body is going to be at the 20 versus my lower body much closer to the 10. And so the frequencies are higher. And so that's why I have an upper pull push pull. This is pull, but this is actually just a full upper at the end of the week. So I am training my back, chest 3 times a week. But I'm training, and what I wanted to talk about here specifically was my delts, and to just take you over that. So you can see here, I'm prioritizing delts. For me as a bodybuilder, I need more delts because I lag on my front shots, my weakest, and that's going to really, really help with my overall taper and aesthetic and symmetry. So I have 4 times a week side delt work, and they're always at the start of every single upper body session. So you can see here, I've got the lateral raise here, I've got the dumbbell Y raise here, I've got again another lateral raise cable there, and then I've got the dumbbell lateral raise there, butterfly style. And you'll see there, it's not just that like every exercise is the same. If there's a variation in terms of rep range, there's also a variation in terms of exercise selection. That's 4 different exercises that I have for my side delts. So when you do also have higher frequencies, or rather higher frequencies are a kind of demand from higher volumes, but when you have higher volumes, you're probably also going to want to have a higher training variety there too, because if you're hitting the same areas the same way each and every time, it's just probably a bit understimulative to what it could be. So now I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to have training footage in the background. You're not just going to have my split there. If you want to pause it and have a look over my split and maybe ask any questions about it, you can ask those in the comments on the YouTube video, but I didn't want to just bore you with me sitting in the corner overviewing my spreadsheet the entire time. The spreadsheet also really just gives you the bare bones of my microcycle in terms of exercise selection, my starting volumes for that mesocycle, and it doesn't really tell you much more. And I have other videos where I've talked about kind of progression methods and this sort of thing, which are going to be probably quite helpful to you. But like I said, ask any questions in the comments below. Either I'll get back to them or with an answer, or I'll be able to do a video in future maybe covering some of these things. So yeah, side delts 4 times a week, start of the session. So first of all, start the session, because that's when we're going to be our most ready to perform at our highest level of like quality. And that's why sometimes you'll see people with like lagging, I don't know what it could be, but maybe it's arms, and they're always doing arms at the end of their workouts, or it's calves and abs, very common one, always done at the end of workouts. And I have them at the end of my workouts now, but previously I have had them at the start of workouts. So that's why I have my side delts at the start of my workouts, because I never really did that historically in my off seasons. They were always kind of after my compound big chest and back movements, which I think is absolutely fine, probably the right thing to do when you're earlier in your kind of bodybuilding and muscle growing career. But as you get later on, you can start putting maybe arms, you can put calves, abs, whatever it is, earlier on in your session, because you've kind of built out your muscles in a big way through those kind of big compound basics. So I wasn't doing 4 different kind of side delt exercises in my last kind of period of training, my last mesocycles. I was doing 2 different ones. but I'd been doing that for quite a long time, and those variations had been in there for a while, and they were feeling okay, but a little bit less stimulative than they had previously. So I was like, I'm going to throw in a bit more variation here. So you'll see I have like 2 free weight variations. So those are probably going to be more challenging up at the top versus down at the bottom in that kind of stretched position, whereas the cables are great because I have those lined up so that basically where I grip is perpendicular to then raising up, so I get a big amount of overload right in that lengthened range, and it drops off as I'm short. So it's nice for that variation. So I get that kind of undulation through stressing the delt slightly differently through different kind of muscle lengths, but also just the different movement inherently is going to tax the side delt a little bit. And you want a bit of, you actually see I have one cable lateral raise that's from the front, which you'll see in this video. I have one from behind, and the side delt, the way it's kind of made up on the shoulder, it isn't like it's just like you can just hit it perfectly with one angle. Like you can attack that side delt with different movements from different angles, and variation is like a good thing within muscle hypertrophy. Obviously you don't want excessive variation, you also don't want to change movements week to week, you want to progress with movements. But I mean, 4 is like, that's the high end of variation for me. It's unlikely I would typically have like 4 different variants for a single muscle group, but like I said, when your volume is getting higher, when your frequency is getting higher, it probably makes sense to have more kind of variance in there, especially if you have lots available. I even have access to a prime lateral raise machine, so I could even like use that sometime, which I probably will rotate in at some point. So that's kind of where I'm attacking. And like I said, the reason I'm doing this is for symmetry purposes in a big way, because I have not a small waist and I don't have wide shoulders and clavicles. And so I need to kind of add thickness there so that my front shot, specifically front relaxed, and my front lat spread might look more impressive. But you can take some of these kind of principles and apply that to your own training. So if you are getting more advanced, or you just are like, man, I just want big arms, and I'm like, they're just lagging behind, you can use some of the things I'm talking about here, and you can prioritize those by having them earlier on within your workout. Potentially you can possibly hold some muscle groups closer to maintenance, or like lower amounts of volume where they're just, maybe you could do more but you're holding them back and they're still growing okay, maybe minimum effective volume, which I do for some of my muscle groups such as arms, because they're an impressive body part for me, and I hold them back so that opens up more recoverability to put towards kind of weaker areas. So you might decide to do the same, where you prioritize your training volume a little bit that way too. So it's through exercise order, but then also level of volume and distribution of that volume, because muscle growth is a dose-response relationship with volume. So long as you're recovering, you generally get more hypertrophy for more volume, assuming therefore you have a baseline of relative intensity. And absolute, you can go too light, but you'd have to go really, really light to cause yourself any problems. So yeah, I have exercise variation within there. I have undulation of rep ranges in there as well, and that's just to allow me to kind of get the best kind of stimulus and adaptation going on, because that's one of the bigger benefits and why daily undulating periodization became so popular. And really, I think it's more of a programming tool, because every good program really undulates rep ranges through the week. It's very rare you just have to exactly like 5 by 5 the entire time. You kind of tend to undulate these, because whilst kind of you're recovering and repairing from maybe one kind of stimulus that you've kind of put through, you're now able to kind of attack that muscle group in a different way. And you tend to find that works really, really well for people, because yeah, it just people get better stimulus and recovery that way, and they can get more, again, just quality volume through the week. So that's why that's set up like that. And like I said, my upper body just generally can recover from higher amounts of volume, and so generally I have higher levels of frequency in there. But even with my upper body in there, you will have noticed I have quite a bit of variation through the week. It isn't like I'm doing chest, like barbell bench press 3 times a week. It's like, well, I'm kind of attacking, I tend to have like a focus of more of the lower chest or kind of mid to low chest, then I have more of like the upper chest, and then I maybe have a session where I focus more on like the front delts and upper chest. It's the same with the back. Like I have a session where actually in general I'm focused on more back width, so more lats, because again that's going to emphasize for me my symmetry, my kind of front shots. So I'm focusing a lot of my volume on those muscle groups. But then I have some sessions where I'm like, my pull session in there is a full kind of back, whereas my other ones are more focused towards like lats and bringing those out versus other things. And then within the session or within my microcycle, you'll also see I have like 2 leg sessions. And whilst both start with hamstrings, one of them, the volume on the hamstrings is way less, and the volume on my quads is much more. And likewise, I've kind of start with hamstrings, my focus is there, and then and then quads are more so on the back burner there. So it's just, this is kind of the art of programming, where you can play with these things and variables in terms of exercise selection, frequency, and it's just finding, again, you're trying to find the right mix for you and whatever allows you to get the best quality volume done at the end of the week, essentially. So I won't continue blabbing. I don't think I've got anything much more to add. I just wanted to take you through a little bit of insight into my training split, the whys, the hows, what that looks like, and it's always good to experiment with these things as well, see what works nicely for you. I'm kind of coming to the point where I'm realizing that I'm maybe putting a little bit too much volume on some of my upper body sessions, because I also do calves and abs on those. So I do calves and abs 4 times a week. I'm maybe thinking I'll tag some of those on to my leg sessions, which are generally like half the amount of volume, but everyone knows like legs just take longer. One set of kind of like a squat pattern takes like double the time of like a pressing or pulling pattern, right? So that tends to happen. Anyway, I'll stop blabbing. I said I was going to stop here. If there's anything you'd particularly like to see, particularly during my off season, my improvement season, do let me know. I thought I'd just give you a bit of an insight into what my split's looking right now, and where I'm prioritizing and why. So guys, as always, if you enjoyed this, please do leave a comment, do subscribe, do share this with anyone who might enjoy it. We always appreciate that support. Otherwise, I'll talk to you soon. Take care.